Hey everybody, watch this review here with a look at Green Arrow from DC Universe Classics, Wave 9. That is the Chemo wave, although he does not have a Chemo piece, he comes with a stand instead. Was almost tempted to not pick him up for that reason, because I am somewhat of a Build-A-Figure / Connect and Connect, I guess, fanatic, but, you know, reason eventually prevailed, and especially the fact that, you know, the providence of actually finding him in stores, which was a huge thing. I also saw Hawkgirl on the same trip, but she had a chip mask, which I don't even know how it happens in package, so I didn't pick her up. Now, I actually spilled soda or something on him, well, the package, obviously, so it looks a little messed up. In terms of the character, I wasn't really a Green Arrow fan until after I'd watched the Justice League cartoons and so forth, and I actually started to go back and read some of his comics, including the team up with Green Lantern that happened during maybe the 80s, 70s or 80s, but I didn't read that until long after the fact, so I have no clue when it actually premiered. I'm going to open them up and we're going to take a look. Now, Green Arrow does come with a number of trick arrows, a boxing glove, what might be a timed explosive. Looks like some sort of bolo or net, I'm not sure. Kind of funky looking though. And finally, what it looks like he's currently has in his bow. Now this of course is absolutely moronic because the arrows fit neither into the quiver nor into the bow itself, because the bow has a fixed arrow. Now why they would choose to give us trick arrows and no way to actually use said trick arrows is absolutely mind-boggling, but whatever. The other general nuisance is the bow itself, which I guess has a fixed plastic for the bowstring, so that really limits the number of poses you can possibly do with a bow and arrow. Which, considering the fact that's Green Arrow's, you know, signature weapon and so forth, doesn't really strike me as being a particularly smart choice either. I mean, this possibly could have benefited from maybe using cloth as opposed to, or, well, actually, not cloth, but something a little bit more malleable, because cloth would be a mistake no matter what. Just because whenever you have a cloth accessory, it eventually just gets completely out of shape. He is about 6.5 inches tall, by the way. I didn't mention Black Canary's height, but she's a little bit shorter. She's 6 inches. He shot an arrow into the air. Oh, sorry, let me think. Actually, let me just quickly run through the articulation. I mean, it's just very standard DC stuff, but let me just try to get the bow out of his hand. Whatever. I'll review the left arm instead of the right. Movable wrist. It will move forward, back, and then rotates the full 360. A little resistance. It's the same deal for both. Single joint wrist, elbow. While I'm on a roll. For some reason there's green paint on the pin joint. Bicep will rotate a full 360, but it will have difficulty going around the back. I wouldn't actually do the full 360 just because it might separate due to the structuring of the bicep. Arm/shoulder has the standard ball joint. Not sure what these little dots are, but I've noticed it on, what was it, Wildcat as well in this wave. Head will rotate a full 360 degrees, but you're not going to want to do that just because it might get caught in the quiver back here. Probably not a big deal, but, you know. Head does not go up or down. Slightly disappointing, especially considering the fact that as an archer he would be expected to shoot up every once in a while. Though I suppose you could just adjust his stance so it looks like he's looking up. Lame. Quiver does not come off, by the way. It's glued in or whatever. No biggie. I probably wouldn't want to take it off just because I'd worry about putting it back on. Ab/diaphragm joint is hindered. I don't know what it's being hindered by because it's not really connecting into the quiver at any tangible thing, but I get a lot of resistance. Waist, full 360 rotation. Standard leg joint here. The thigh will do the usual rotation. Single joint knee. Surprisingly, there's no point at the calf. Actually, come to think of it, the DCs don't really have points at the calf. Usually I'm thinking of Marvels. Then the foot / ankle will go forward and back, and it feels like it goes a little side to side, but it might just be a loose joint. All in all, it's a great looking representation of the character himself, especially facial sculpt. But I mean, other elements, really aren't as great. I mean, he's a character where the solid tones are almost acceptable. I have a bit of a flash sticking out there. And he actually does look pretty decent, even as a complete solid. This whole wave, though, is actually pretty good. As mentioned in a previous review, I was really impressed with the Wildcat. This figure is also great. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. I mean, it's got shortcomings across the board in terms of just the fact it can't look up and the bow isn't all it could be, but very impressive sculpt. Nice use of colors. My figure doesn't have too many paint defects and so forth. A little bleed here and there, but it's barely noticeable as a whole. Sculpt, awesome, especially the head sculpt. It's a very overall good impression. I mean, the weakest figure I've seen so far in this wave is probably the Black Canary, ironically, which was the one I wanted the most, but it lacks articulation and so forth. Although I actually haven't seen Guardian in person yet, so he might actually be the weakest. But I have a feeling it's probably her. I have the Dead Shell, I'll probably review him at some point. And, by the way, I wasn't posing him quite correctly. In terms of hand placement, I was having his fingers go up here, which obviously wouldn't go. I mean, it should go maybe around the feathers here, or more realistically around the string. I mean, I have a rough idea of how a bow works before anybody may or may not jump on me. Although I've never had anybody jump on me. I've generally had pretty nice people watching all my reviews. Haven't had a really rude guy yet. At some point I expect I probably will, just because the law of averages. But yeah, until next time, folks. Green Arrow. I would definitely pick him up if you're a fan, and even if you're not, I'd possibly give him a look.